Here is an interesting article for you guys. Are you ready? Are you ready? Okay, so let me preface this by saying that this isn't really talked about that much. And I guess the brain has so much damage to it that the person is convinced that their delusions are real. And when you bring them back down to earth, you grab them by the ankles and pull them down to reality, they get pissed. They get mad. They may storm off. They may argue. Okay. This article is by Ross Rosenberg. Has a master's of education. He's a licensed clinical professional counselor, and he's also a counselor of addicts and, people who have drug addictions and that kind of thing. He's a counselor for that as well. So he's super educated. He's also a psychotherapist, educator, art author, and expert witness. So, needless to say, he's pretty smart. So, this is the article that he wrote, and I'm going to go over it with you. And it is Self Love Recovery Institute. And the article is Pathological Narcissists Are Delusional, as you see on the page here. Okay. Are you ready? Let's go. Let's go. So I know two individuals who are highly narcissistic, and both of them are convinced. You ready? Seriously? You ready? They are convinced that they are affiliated with the mafia. Okay. One of them, whom you've heard me just, talk about, discuss, is so far gone mentally and psychologically that he's convinced that the reason why he's so cold and has no empathy is because the mafia came in when he was 13 years old and taught him how to suppress his emotions when he was 13, which is the biggest load of crap ever. But when someone's damaged in their brain, you cannot convince them of anything different. Okay. They are persuaded that this is what actually happened, which is stupid and illogical. Another person I know who is severely narcissistic and gone in the head, she has a multitude of issues, one of them being narcissism. She was not only convinced that she was also with the mafia, but she was also convinced that she was going to marry this married guy. She was convinced that he's leaving his wife. She bought herself a ring, and I know she bought herself a ring, and I'll tell you how I know. She bought herself a ring and convinced herself that he gave her the ring, even though she bought it. And he asked her to marry. Well, he basically, according to her, put the ring on her finger and said, "You're going to marry me," which doesn't really sound like something someone would say. They should ask you, not demand. It was all optical illusions, because when I talked to him, because I was like, okay, I'm going to when I finished, I cut her off because she put me through the ringer for many years. She put me through the goddamn ringer, and I'd had enough of her shit. So when I contacted him, I contacted multiple people with his name and left messages, and I said, "This is who I am. I met you in Minnesota when Kim and I went there to see you. If you don't know who I am, then please disregard this message." And I left that message for everybody with that name, which was only like 4 or 5 people. Well, I hit the right person because I got a phone call that Monday. And it was from him, her little lover, or she was trying to be a lover with him, but he wasn't down for the physical part. He just wanted to talk smack on the phone, on the dating sites and all this, and play games. Most people on the mating sites are not available. They're married or seeing someone else. They're in a serious relationship. They're playing games. Or they're trying to get laid, and or all the above. So I talked to him, and I said, "Let me ask you a question. I want you to be honest with me." He said, "Okay." Are you leaving your situation? No. So you're not separated or going to get separated? No. Why? Oh, because she bought herself a ring and said that you asked her to marry her and told me that you were leaving your wife. And he was so stunned, he was silent for a few seconds. And he goes, so what did he? Oh, alternate reality, huh? Yeah. Said that y'all were going to get married and you were going to have a wedding reception in the Maldives, which are islands in the Indian Ocean. Y'all going to go to the Maldives. And he was just totally shocked, blown away. What the hell's happening right now? He was probably thinking, am I being punked or something? Because, and I'm grateful for not being delusional. I'm so grateful that I am steadfast in reality and common sense and logic, because this other world where you just convince that you are whatever and whoever because you said so is just absolutely insane. He was stunned. He was totally stunned. And if he was smart, he would have blocked her on his phone the same day. You're not going to talk no sense into somebody who's illogical and mentally ill. You're not going to talk no sense into them. You can forget it right now. So let's go into the world of delusions, right? These days, the term delusion or delusional is used well beyond its original clinical meaning. Like many of my other mental conceptualizations, I understand it according to levels of severity or gradations. In its most pronounced form, it represents a symptom of a debilitating mental illness. This is coming from a professional with so much education, I had to literally look up what those initials meant. Okay? The M.Ed, I figured it was a master's in education, which it is. So he's pretty damn smart. Having delusions are symptomology of a debilitating mental illness. This isn't someone doing it for fun, or like somebody will lie and say, I caught a fish and it took me 2 hours to reel him in. We're not talking about somebody exaggerating and delusional that way. Meanwhile, it was just a minnow that they caught. But we're talking about somebody who goes deep into delusion and they are convinced that this is real. And don't you freaking dare bring them into reality, because they get mad. They really get mad. And I get mad because I don't know where your brain's at. Because I didn't understand what the frick was going on. Anyway, its more informal version describes a person or action that is mildly upsetting or dysfunctional. A delusion is a sincere belief, not questioned or adamantly held on to despite evidence to the contrary. Reality is 1,000% different, but in their mind, this is the way it goes. And no one should question me. And don't you dare bring me down to reality. Don't you do it. Don't you freaking do it. Anyway, back to the article. According to the Merriam-Webster Online Dictionary, delusion is a persistent, false, psychotic belief regarding the self or persons or objects outside the self that is maintained despite indisputable evidence to the contrary. In addition, dictionary.com defines delusional as maintaining fixed false beliefs even when confronted with facts, usually because of mental illness. And also having false or unrealistic beliefs or opinions. Delusional thoughts or belief patterns can be a primary symptom of a painful, difficult to treat, and extraordinarily challenging mental illness such as schizophrenia, for example. On the other hand, chronic or periodic delusionality is manifested by psychological, environmental, and developmental causes. The latter explanation for delusionality represents a person who consciously expends effort to deny their reality or, on the other hand, is prone to unconscious or dissociative avoidance, personality disturbances, drug abuse, trauma, and other more reactive and often treatable explanations. The delusions of a pathological narcissist fit the second category. Codependents can be prone to milder presentations of delusional thinking, as earlier discussed in the Human Magnet Syndrome books, Codependency Delusion, and Roller Coaster Amnesia sections. However, the primary distinction between codependent and narcissistic delusional thought and belief patterns is their consciousness and ability to self-correct. Narcissists are not capable of such awareness and insight, while codependents are. Another reason I know that they're aware of the bullshit that they're saying is because when we were going to go to see the manipulator's parents, the bullshit that was flooding his brain, don't tell my parents that, don't tell my parents that, don't tell my parents this, don't tell my parents that. Right, because you don't want them to put your ass in a padded cell, which is where you should have been anyway. For the rest of your crooked life, you should have been in a padded cell because you're not based in reality at all. Now, can he function at work? Yes, because his clients at work, customers, whatever the hell they are, they don't really care what your thoughts are. They just need their papers printed. Okay? So they don't really care about you thinking you're in the military and you just fly by night, got all this shit in your head. They don't really care about that. They just want their project done on time. But, oh my God, he knew he was full of shit, and that's why he didn't want his parents to know. All people prone to delusions, insist their subjective interpretations are accurate despite evidence to the contrary. The impaired position is defended when proof or evidence contradicts the delusions. The person holding on to or insisting on the factual nature of their delusions often experiences personal, emotional, social, occupational, and various other possible consequences. Delusional people are adamantly defiant, opposed, and resistant to evidence that could disprove their subjective but mistaken interpretations of a person, an event, or any aspect of themselves. Depending on the severity of the mental health condition or disorder, the delusional person reacts to someone insisting they are mistaken with annoyance, anger, and agitation. Some exact punishment on anyone who holds them accountable for their distorted thoughts and beliefs. People with narcissistic personality disorder demonstrate all of the above, especially their inflated appraisal of their worth, contributions, and unrealistic expectations for respect and even admiration and praise. Their sense of entitlement or beliefs of deserving or requiring special treatment is another example of this narcissist delusional belief system. Grandiosity and entitlement are common traits of delusional pathological narcissists. Grandiose narcissists are guided emotionally, personally, and socially by their unrealistic belief of superiority, which in turn supports their entitled beliefs for favors, special treatment, and respect. Besides their distorted thoughts and beliefs about being better, more unique, and more talented than others, they believe few others have anything in common with them. These pathological narcissists unrealistically think only other people with the same supposed positive attributes could understand them. Delusional pathological narcissists often are involved in unstable, oh my God. Yes. Let's highlight this with a bright yellow marker. Let me say this again. Delusional pathological narcissists often are involved in unstable and conflict-ridden relationships. I call them manipulationships. Anyway, therefore, any person who attempts to disprove or hold them accountable for their delusional based grandiosity and entitlement is perceived as a threat or enemy requiring an overt, covert, or passive aggressive punitive response. The only relationships delusional, pathological narcissists can maintain are with people who believe in their unrealistic and inflated beliefs, choose not to challenge them, or fear the consequences of it. Like, remember I told you he claimed sometimes people will, I guess they climb the cliffs or whatever, and I don't know how they do it, but they put like a hammock across, and there's a gorge down below. If you fall out of your hammock, you're pretty much dead. That's how high up in the air you are. And he showed a picture of people doing it, and the reason his ass supposedly wasn't in the picture is because he was the one taking a picture. Again, he's delusional. That never happened. He's full of shit. He probably got that off the internet. Anyway, unfortunately, people suffering from codependency are most susceptible to such delusional and grandiose pathological narcissists. Pathological narcissists often project their delusional beliefs that they are the victim, codependent, and the real codependent is responsible for the relationship's problems. Everyone is responsible for the conflict in the relationship, according to a narcissist, but they're mentally ill. So naturally, they're going to believe it's everyone else's fault and not theirs because they can't handle shame and they can't handle the fact that they are as twisted as they are. They can't handle that. So it's everyone else's fault but theirs. The opposite matching of the delusional narcissist and semi-delusional codependent, as described in a book called Human Magnet Syndrome, requires the weaker and more psychologically pliable partner to adopt a semi-delusional thought process. As a result, codependents fall victim to what I refer as codependency delusion. Since a delusion is a belief not supported by reality, a codependent is also delusional when they sincerely believe that they can control or mitigate the harm caused by their pathologically narcissistic loved one. Some codependents survive the unavoidable narcissistic abuse by the ignorance is bliss philosophy, by purposely dissociating from the actual cause of their problems and feigning blindness. They uphold the delusional belief that what is not seen is simply not there. Furthermore, the prospect of being painfully alone fuels the codependent's lifelong delusion that with time, patience, and sacrifice, the narcissist lover will willingly correct their errant ways, sincerely apologize for them, and voluntarily change them, thereby returning to the person responsible for their original soulmate bliss. And a narcissist, if the narcissist apologizes to take responsibility for everything, that just lets the narcissist get away with everything. If the narcissistic partner just lets them slide on everything or just pretends that ignorance is bliss or whatever. And I'm going to give you more proof that this person is delusional because it made no sense. In case you're not sure if this person is delusional, connect the dots and you will see that you can't connect the dots. Well, you connect the dots, but what you'll find is that the whole thing doesn't make sense. And I'll give you an example. So, manipulator boy decided to try to talk me into repelling. And I wasn't down at first. I'm like, yeah, I'm not really feeling that. And this is before I got I'm jacked up, more jacked up now than I was back then. But anyway, he convinced me. And I'm like, yeah, we could do that. Well, he just needed to know that he could talk me into something that was never going to happen. Because when I said, well, let's do it. When are we going to do it? Because he kept bugging me about it, When are we going to do it? But, and I said, okay, fine, let's do it. And unfortunately, it was all a lie because he ain't never repelled. He don't know jack shit about that. And the reason I know that is because his excuse why we couldn't do it, again, he's delusional. The reason he couldn't do it is because he left the ropes in the garage and you have to keep them in a temperature-controlled environment. Okay, now let me ask you something. Let me ask you something. Those of y'all that are listening to this, how many of y'all are going to put yourself in a situation where your life is at risk? If you do it wrong, you could die, and you're going to be lackadaisical about your safety equipment? I'm waiting. Anybody? Anybody out there going to do that? No, right? The first thing that you would do is learn about safety. Once you know, you get all your equipment. For those people that are not delusional, they actually do it. They get their equipment, they learn how to do it properly, they learn how to do it safely, they learn how to, the first thing, you learn how to store it correctly so that you don't get killed the first time you try it. You know? Nobody's going to just lackadaisically take the rope and fling it somewhere and hope for the best. They're not going to do that. They're going to be concerned about safety. So this fool was lying out the left side of his ass. He don't know the first thing about repelling. So he's trying to perpetrate with his church, Open Heart Baptist Church in Columbia, Missouri, by the way. He's trying to perpetrate to them that he is just this athlete and he has no fear and he climbs cliffs and he hangs over gorges. He don't do jack shit like that. That is all in his imagination. None of that is real. He's hiked before, and that's the extent of it. Okay? That's the extent of it. Nobody is going to do something for a hobby and not care about their safety. They're not going to care about how you're supposed to store it, what do you do first, second, third, fourth. They're not going to be lackadaisical unless they want to die. Same thing with guns. I'm not into guns. I know a lot of people are into guns. You're going to know about safety. Okay? So you'll have a situation, for example, where somebody supposedly, quotation marks, accidentally shot their partner, and he's a police officer. He didn't accidentally shoot his partner. He meant to shoot his partner, because the first thing you learn when you're dealing with guns is safety. You ain't going to do nothing careless like that. He shot her right in the middle of her forehead. That was done on purpose. What do you think, I'm Susie Sausage Head? Come on now. Safety is the first thing you learn. So no, you're not going to take the ropes and toss them over there and hope that they're still they're still good enough to use the next time. He's lying. He's lying. He's trying to perpetrate. Oh wait, maybe the freaking mafia taught him how to repel. And they didn't teach him how to store his ropes correctly. Oh, God, I'm freaking dying. Oh, God, I'm freaking dying. Anyway, y'all. Y'all take care. I hope you enjoyed the article. Bye.